As the world's second-largest economy, China has an important influence on the economic development of many countries. However, views on economic cooperation with China are divided among Western countries. Germany, in particular, appears to be accelerating its reduction in economic dependence on China. This policy shift is reflected not only in the pressure on German companies in China, requiring them to relocate high-end industrial chains, but also in the intervention in Sino-German business exchanges. Some EU politicians even warned the German government to implement de-Sinicization. Despite this background, the recent actions of Germany's Hamburg Port Group show a different trend. The group announced that China's COSCO shipping group will acquire a 35% stake in the port of Hamburg Container Terminal for €65 million. The two sides reached a preliminary consensus after multiple rounds of negotiations, but the final completion of this important transaction still requires formal approval from the German government. However, it is worth mentioning that this acquisition is particularly concerning in the current political and economic environment in which the European Union has raised objections. So, why do some EU politicians oppose China's acquisition of ports? How important is this port to China? If you like our video content, please click to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can receive all our latest video content. Now, let's get into today's topic. As we all know, One Belt, One Road is China's major strategy for opening up to the outside world in the new era. It is not only China's best choice to deal with the current global peace, but also an important platform to promote global cooperation and win-win situations. But today we are discussing the Port of Hamburg in the Belt and Road Strategic Plan. As far as I know, the Port of Hamburg is the largest port in Germany and the second largest container port in Europe. There are as many as 204 railway lines from the Port of Hamburg to China, radiating to many regions in China. For China, investing in the Port of Hamburg is a key plan to promote the further development of trade between China and Germany. Therefore, China plans to spend €65 million to acquire a 35% stake in the German Port of Hamburg. In fact, as early as September 2021, China and Germany signed an agreement on this acquisition. But at the time, this cooperation aroused concern and opposition from many EU politicians, especially the German economy minister. According to the agreement, if the German government does not make a decision to ban or delay before the end of October 2022, the transaction will be completed automatically. Therefore, EU politicians have been looking for various ways to try to block this deal. So why would they oppose the acquisition? Germany's Green Party has strongly opposed port development over the past few years as well as infrastructure expansion. Some German media also followed the Green Party's lead and conducted negative reports on the Port of Hamburg acquisition and intensified their exaggeration of China's threat theory. On the other hand, the war between Russia and Ukraine in February 2022 also caused Germany and other European countries to face a serious energy crisis. Against this background, some interest groups in Germany have begun to worry that over-reliance on China may lead to a recurrence of similar crises. Therefore, they began to take a more cautious attitude towards Sino-German cooperation. They believe that as one of Germany's largest ports with the highest throughput, part of the equity in the Port of Hamburg falls into the hands of Chinese companies, which may have an adverse impact on Germany's trade security. This prompted the deal's final deadline to be extended to the end of 2022. More importantly, because Germany has always followed the political direction of the United States, some senior German leaders have publicly advocated economic decoupling from China many times. This clearly challenges China's bottom line and fails to respect the core interests of cooperation with China. Due to the stance of the German government, some normal cooperation between the two parties has also been seriously affected. The acquisition of the Port of Hamburg is an example. They did not take into account the possible benefits of selling the Port of Hamburg equity but opposed it out of resistance to China. Especially in recent years, German intelligence services have strongly recommended that the government reject China's participation in German infrastructure projects. They are worried that any differences in Sino-German relations may seriously affect the operation of the Port of Hamburg. The German Minister of Economy even publicly stated that China cannot be allowed to acquire equity in the Port of Hamburg. However, German Chancellor Scholz finally withstood the pressure. Not only did he not oppose the acquisition submitted by China, he also directly ignored the opposition of cabinet members and ordered the completion of the acquisition by the end of October. Scholz's attitude not only caused him to come under tremendous pressure in Germany, but also made him the target of attacks by the European Union. According to Western media reports, the EU is very opposed to Scholz's insistence on selling ports to China because China is likely to obtain confidential commercial information about the ports and endanger Germany's national security. In fact, German Chancellor Scholz served as mayor of Hamburg for 7 years before becoming chancellor. This work experience gave him a deep understanding of the cooperation between Hamburg and China. He clearly knows that China's participation in the Hamburg Port project is beneficial to Germany's interests, so this is the main reason why he stands with China. He recognized that China was Germany's partner, not its enemy. Now that the EU has decoupled from Russian energy, if it loses the Chinese market again, Europe will be completely controlled by the United States. Scholz made it clear that Germany will not exclude cooperation with China. At the same time, Germany also gave China a generous gift by selling 35% of its shares in the Port of Hamburg. Under Scholz's promotion, important projects affecting the interests of China and Germany were finally restarted. While we don't know the specifics yet, it's safe to assume that the project is already moving forward. Whatever the final outcome, this is good news in the current context of growing trade barriers and protectionism. So, how important is this port to China? In fact, the Port of Hamburg is located in northern Germany. It is the largest port in Germany and an important port that is Germany's gateway to the world. At the same time, it is also the most important transit seaport in Europe and plays a very important role in world trade. It has the largest warehouse city in the world, covering an area of 500,000 square meters. In 2020, the annual throughput of the Port of Hamburg was 8.52 million TEU, ranking behind the Port of Rotterdam and Port of Antwerp. Public data shows that in Hamburg, Germany, about 1.2 million containers come from China or are shipped to China every year. Therefore, this port is very important to both Germany and China. In the current complex and ever-changing world situation, German Chancellor Scholz attaches great importance to and strengthens Sino-German relations and economic and trade cooperation, which is conducive to the development of both countries and the world. In the past year, Sino-German trade relations have been very close. China is Germany's main partner because of the size of its market. Germany has the most complete industrial system in Europe, and its industrial product output is huge, and it needs to meet market demand through exports to China. Sino-German cooperation has become one of the important driving forces for Germany's economic development.